Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm excited to bring you a convention report because I just, over this weekend, tabled at a new convention, a small convention in Athol, Massachusetts. I just wanted to tell you all about that. Before I dive into that video, I also want to mention I'm almost to 600 subscribers, so thank you all very much. In the link down below, if you go to the About This video, there's going to be a link to my Ask Me Anything questions. So there's a video where for 600 subscribers, I'm doing an Ask Me Anything, and there's still time until we hit 600 to ask your questions. So just follow the link down below, ask me whatever you want, and then when we hit 600, I'll do a video where I answer any questions that you have. So just follow that down below. I wanted to talk about this show in Athol. I was very excited to go to this show. This is my fourth show of the year. Last show I'll be doing this year. It's a special show. It's the first show out in Athol, Mass. For those who haven't been to Athol or aren't familiar with Athol, it's out on Route 2, getting out towards Western Mass. It's in that liminal zone between Central Mass into Western Mass. You're heading out on Route 2 west from Boston. It's going to take you a good, hour and a half depending on traffic to get out there. And Athol's kind of like it's not a big town. However, because there aren't any big towns in the area, it's the biggest town in the area, so it's got all the stuff you might expect from a decent town. It's got your hospitals, it's got your libraries, it's got all the fixins, and it also has going for it my friends at Hero Shack Comics. Now, Hero Shack, like me, the people at Hero Shack, they do indie comics, self-published passion projects. So Chris Tamulovich, he does all the comics at Hero Shack, the Great Cyclopean. I've showed off his books here before. And then Diana Tamulovich actually organized the convention, the Athol Comic Love Fest. First ever. And now I've done a couple of small shows recently. I've done a couple library shows. We had the Winchendon show, the BealsCon, and then a couple years ago I did a show in Maynard at their library convention. And so having done the library shows before and sort of, small town shows, I wasn't really expecting a lot. They're fun to do. It's fun to meet the other creators, and it's fun to, just sort of get out there. But most of the shows that are these little local shows I've done, there haven't been much in the way of attendance. But I have to say, Diana, who organized the whole thing, did a great job. There's actually more other creators than I was expecting. The previous, again, this isn't technically a library show. It was held at Town Hall, but it's right next to the library, and it was done in conjunction with the library. So the library was promoting it heavily. So it's kind of a library show. And the other ones I've done, we've had 3-4 creators, maybe a couple artisans, that sort of thing. This time we actually had there was 6 or 7 of us that make comic strips. There were novelists, and then there were 2 or 3 other artists who do comic related art, and there were actually 2 back issue vendors. So again, a different experience for me at the little local shows that I've done. Typically I've only had in my experience, other indie creators, right? This is the first time I've seen any back issue vendors. And so it was great to see all my fellow creators. I've now that I've done a few shows this year, I'm getting to know people more. There's local people that I've seen at shows before, but now we've tabled together at several shows. So besides Chris, there's Keith, who does Mighty Mascots, and then there's the guys at Pyramid Nights. And the guy that does Ace Chicken, Space Chicken. These are all local indie books that I've mentioned on previous videos because they've tabled. I've either bought their books or they've tabled with me at other shows, or both, often both. So it's just really cool to see all those people. But also, besides that, I have some back issues that I actually bought there. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone who came out to the show. It was actually really well attended. A lot more people than I've been at the other local sort of library shows. Again, I wasn't really expecting that much just based on those previous experiences, but there was a lot more attendance, a lot more people, a lot more engagement. Um, at the previous shows that I've done, the sales that I've had have been very small. And they've basically been to the other creators because the indie community, we do support each other. This case was a little different because we've all been at all the shows together. It's like I've already bought the comics from all of the other people that were tabling there. They had also kind of already bought my comics, so there wasn't as much of that. Um, but I did sell some stuff at the show, and the table for this first show at least was free. So it was overall, it was just a great atmosphere, and Diana really set up a lot of great stuff. There was we actually had panels where we went and answered questions about our comics and talked to the fans that came out. And there was a cosplay contest, and it had all the stuff that you would get from a big show, but it was local. There's a lot of people in the community that all knew each other, so it felt like a very sort of homey thing. So it was really great. Again, in terms of sales, since the table was free, I made a table. We did pretty well at the show, actually. For a show that we didn't even hit $50, but for a show this size, we did really well. And anytime I sell the books, it's great. I will say, one thing that's definitely I've noticed, and is not really a surprise to me, but when I do these shows, I don't really sell Crime Busters very much. I get a lot of people that look at it, that think it's cool, but they don't really buy it. People that buy my comics, they tend to buy Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam. It is a higher concept. It has a broader audience, has a built-in audience for Cthulhu fans. So, with Crime Busters, there's a segment of the population that likes the Scooby-Doo vibe, and there's people that there's a much smaller audience for the Golden Age, public domain characters. But Cthulhu, Uncle Sam, it just it's very self-explanatory and has a much bigger base. So that was the case here at this show. I sold 4 comics, all copies of Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam. Nobody bought any copies of Crime Busters. I sold 1 print. That was a Cthulhu versus Uncle Sam print. I did sell a set of trading cards, which includes characters from both titles. So, but overall, it was really a really great positive experience. I want to thank my wife for coming out with me. It's hard for me to get out some of these shows because of some of the health issues, so she has to drive me around, and so she spent her day helping me man the booth, or staff the booth, I should say, and drove me around. And it was just a really really nice show. Really great. I'm gonna have the link down below for Hero Shack, so if you want to check out any of their books. Yeah, so it was a great positive experience. And as I mentioned, I did have some comics. Now, again, usually when I come from these shows, I have a pile of the indie books that I've got from the other creators. I don't have any of those, but I do have back issues. 2 stores there, and I've actually featured both of them on my channel already because I've visited both of them in person. The 2 stores were His and Hers Comics out in Greenfield, and actually all the comics I bought were from them, and they were all out of their $2 box, but they were having a deal. It was 3 for $5, so these are about $1.65 each. The other store that was there was Holy Moly, which is I think down in Southampton. They have a lot of cool stuff too, but the stuff that they brought was sort of more of the mainstream Marvel DC, which I don't really buy much of either of those things anymore. So I will say His and Her Comics, if you're in the Greenfield area, definitely check it out because they have some stuff there. They have some stuff you do not see very often. Old stuff, sort of harder to find. Westerns, war books. They have some really nice late 50s, early 60s DC war books. Some of the gray wash, like GI Combat, stuff like that. I commented on that last time when I visited their store. They had a couple things that you just don't see anywhere. They had it's a little out of my collecting interest, so I did not buy it. But they had a pre-code Charlton crime book, which I don't think I've ever seen before. Those pre-code Charltons, early Charlton, books from the early 50s. Those are hard to find, man. I've never seen this comic before, and it was in decent shape, particularly for a Charlton. So like some really cool stuff that they had there. So I have this pile of stuff. I got these all out of the, again, the 3 for $5 box. So it was about $1.65 each. And here we go. So several issues of Archie at Riverdale High. Now I'm a little more than halfway through completing this run. Other than the first issue, I've got all the other issues in the series for $1 or $2 out of these $1 or $2 boxes. I did notice that my checklist is definitely out of date for this title. So one thing you should expect to see sometime, hopefully in the next couple months on my channel, is I have piles of comics all over my office. Like everything I've bought for like the last year or more is just in piles everywhere. Plus all the stuff I've been taking out of my boxes to show on the channel, I haven't like put back in. So it's becoming very difficult for me to find anything. So I'm going to do a video about organizing and sorting and cleaning up my collection here and getting things back. And when I do that, I'm going to have to fix my checklist, particularly for Archie at Riverdale High, because I know the checklist is wrong. A couple of these may be doubles at this point. I don't know. But I got, here's issue 46, issue 74. The reason I collected this title in particular is because it's the type of Archie book that I really like. I mean, I like a lot of different Archie style books, and I like the humor books, but I really dig it when they do the longer form, more dramatic stories. So I have, Life with Archie, I have most of that series, but Archie at Riverdale High, also longer form dramatic stories. For most of the run, you could actually have called the book Chuck and Me. They have like Betty and Me is a Betty series, and then Archie and Me is actually all stories about Archie with Principal Weatherby. So it's actually a Principal Weatherby solo title, which is a little strange. That ran well over 100 issues. And most of the series features Chuck. 89. Some of these later issues are definitely harder to find, the ones with the pennant logo. Some of these issues are also the ones that have early appearances from Cheryl Blossom during her first run in the early 80s. And these are the ones I might have doubles, because I got some of these. I know I got some of these in another recent haul video, and none of them are reflected in my checklist. These issues in the 90s. But here's issue 94. Issue 96. Your typical tough street gang. You can tell that guy's got a mohawk and he's smoking. That's bad news. 97. What did Archie and friends do while Rome burned? Don't miss the history lesson. This looks like it might be the Archie Art Players, which is an ongoing feature across multiple books and multiple decades, where it's basically the Archie characters putting on like school plays, so it allows them to do stories in different time periods. Rough condition but solid book. It's Archie Annual number 20. It's actually pretty solid. It doesn't even seem that musty. Main problem, of course, is the really bad fingerprints. Obviously, someone had wet hands when they handled this 40, 50 years ago, and so it's messed up, the cover. But other than that, it's pretty solid. Okay, here's a book that's really interesting. I'm not sure I've talked about these before. This might be the first one I've actually gotten. It's Archie All-Star Special. It's Giant Spectacular Comics. You can see it's really thick. It says 160 pages in full color. So what's super interesting about this to me, there's a house out on the back for more of these with different titles, is that what these are is they're remaindered books. They're remaindered books where after they were like sent back or overstock or whatever, took the covers off, bound them all together, and then slapped a new cover on it. This is something that publishers used to do really in the 40s a lot. But this is from the mid-70s, and so this actually contains a number of different Archie comics that have been bound together. Because of that, I'm not 100% sure, like, if you got this comic, like, if you found this with this cover, it might not have the same interior. I'm not sure about that. But so, like, this has, for instance, the first one in it is Archie Giant Series number 235, right? But then if you go a few pages into it, So you can see we're a few pages into it. Look, there's a new first page with a new indicia, and this is Betty and Veronica 236. And then you keep going through it, and you get to Archie Pals and Gals 96. Let's see what else is in here. We get Sabrina the Teenage Witch, number 26. These are all from 1975. And then after that one, we get Archie's Joke Book 211. That might be the last one. I think that's the last one. And they all are cover dated August of 1975. So they've taken a bunch of remaindered issues that didn't sell with a cover dated August 75, bound them all together into one book, and tried to sell them a second time. So I find these really, really interesting. The cover price was $1.25 in 1975. I paid $1.65. So at worst, I'm definitely getting my money's worth with the reading material, right? But it's an interesting, cool collectible. Okay, and now, so that's the Archie portion, but I also have this, right? And you saw a little sneak peek of what it is, because they had quite a few nice, higher grade, definitely like new old stock, like books that didn't sell in the mid 80s when they came out and were put in a box without bags and boards. So they are, they have that sort of like thumb damage and corner, rubbing, but otherwise clearly unread and flat and glossy and really nice shape. A bunch of issues of Star Comics. Now, these have a lot of nostalgia for me, both in terms of the content, but also because I read the Star Comics. I just started reading comics when the Star Comics line was launched, and so I read not all of these, but a lot of these when they came out. I bought some of these specifically for my wife as well, because I know she's nostalgic about some of the specific things. So let me just go through it real quick. Here's Ewoks number 2. And some of these the Star Comics as a line are starting to go up a little bit because of that nostalgia, right? And so it's not like they're worth a ton of money, but like this Ewoks, it's in nice shape. Like it's probably an 8 or an 8.5. So it's flat, clean, just little things around the corners, that sort of thing. Definitely never been read, I'm sure of it. And so like this is a book that's probably, worth $8-9 now in this condition. So, I picked it up, but I also picked up 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 very nice copies of Muppet Babies number 1. Now, I'm not a fan of Muppet Babies. I think I've mentioned this before, but I really can't stand any kind of kid or baby version of established characters. So I do not have any nostalgia for this. I bought 3 copies because I know other people do, so there's a little bit of a, sort of investment, $1.65 each. But also I got this because I was going to get at least one for my wife. My wife was a big fan of Muppet Babies. She's a little bit younger than I am. So when Muppet Babies was coming out, besides the fact that I always just hate the concept, I was probably 12 when Muppet Babies came out, 11 or 12, whereas my wife was like 4 or 5, right? And so they're much more for her age, and so she has a lot of nostalgia for Muppet Babies. So again, I got 3. That was the first copy. And with the black cover, I'm assuming these are probably not that easy to find in nice condition because they were marketed for kids, and these copies are all probably 8, 8.5, 9. So, again, for $1.65 each, very pleased with this. I think these books are all about $10 books at this point. Another one that probably worth the most of any of these, but I got it for my wife. It's Strawberry Shortcake number 1. Obviously, I'm not personally that invested in Strawberry Shortcake, but my wife was a really big fan of Strawberry Shortcake. We still have some of her Strawberry Shortcake stuff from when she was a kid. And again, this is a really nice, tight, flat, clean high grade copy. This is a book that I think is a $10 to $15 book. But it's for my wife, so that doesn't really matter what the value is, but I was really excited to get that. And then, now I already had a couple of these, but in much lower grade. This one, this number one, it does have a thumb bend at the top that has caused a bit of a tear. So all of these is probably the lowest grade, but it's Fraggle Rock number one. And I think I have a copy already, but the other copy that I got out of like a 50-cent bin somewhere is much lower grade. It's very low grade. Now, Fraggle Rock is a show that I was really into as a kid. But I also got high grade copies of Fraggle Rock number 2. And Fraggle Rock number 3. So a lot of nostalgia. I again, my wife, big fan of Fraggle Rock as a kid. Me too. So it's just really cool to get all of these. I told my wife, I was like, "Oh, you're gonna dig this. I got some good stuff." And she was like, she doesn't really collect comics, so she was like skeptical. But when I showed her the Strawberry Shortcake and the Muppet Babies and the Fraggle Rock, she was very excited. Finally, one more that I got. I probably shouldn't have bothered with this one because I got it because I thought my wife, it was, again, is my wife's age group, but she didn't actually watch the show, and I definitely didn't. So it was kind of a waste of $1.50, but it's Get Along Gang number 1. Not sure the nostalgia boom has quite hit Get Along Gang as much as it has those other properties. Again, the Fraggle Rock's not worth as much as the other books that I was showing there, but still, these are in nice and they're also not quite as in nice condition. But I mean, all of those are books that I think really are probably at least $5 books in today's, and all of these are going up. All the Star books are going up. I say that all the Star licensed books are going up. The ones that are really expensive, of course, are the ones that are more for boys. So is He-Man and Thundercats, because those are the people. The majority of the comic back issue collectors, were boys at the time, and so those books, I saw the same store that I got these for $1.65 each had a He-Man number 1 from Star Comics for $50 on their wall book. So I know that those are the expensive ones, and there's actually some rare price variants for Thundercats number 1. So just FYI, Get Along Gang, probably not so much. But very excited. Whenever I see these Star comics, I do tend to pick them up. Not so much they also had a lot of the originals, like the comics that were original to Star Comics as opposed to licensed properties. And I did not buy any of those, even though I read them at the time. Planet Terry, Wally the Wizard, Top Dog, Royal Roy, which I think they got sued over. All of those, they had copies of all of those, but I didn't get those. Those haven't really gone anywhere. These are the titles that are really sort of going up. And of course, the ones that are very expensive now, and I say very expensive, but the ones that are really getting hard to find and expensive in terms of Star Comics, which I have not found yet, are some of them had the November 1986 Marvel 25th anniversary frame cover with all the superheroes and stuff. So people that trying to put together the full set of the frame covers have a very hard time finding some of these Star Comics ones. Heathcliff Care Bears, the hardest to find. Care Bears is another Star Comics title that unfortunately they did not have. And that was one I definitely would have also gotten for my wife because she's a big Care Bears fan. So anyway, it's just very exciting. You don't really see these that often. And it's certainly not in nice condition for this price. So there you have it. Again, as usual, probably not the content you're getting on most of the other channels. No Wolverine, no X-Men, no Batman. It's all Muppet Babies and Fraggle Rock up in here. So anyway, again, I want to thank Chris and Diana for setting up the Athol Comic Book Love Fest. I'm forgetting exactly what it's called. Great show. They did a great job organizing it, and everyone was really friendly, and we did really well at the show. So hopefully I can get a little momentum and get people to start to buy Crime Busters. I mean, after my next issue of Crime Busters comes out, sometime next year, I'm going to do my first trade, which is going to be very exciting to have like a book, like just for my own shelf. It's just going to be super exciting. But also I've had a number of people at different shows over the year ask if I had a trade. So I do think that once I have the trade, I'll be more likely to sell Crime Busters in particular. Um, but we'll see how next year's shows goes. This is my last show for this year. I'm already starting to think about, what I want to do, what shows I want to go to next year. But let me know what you think down below. Check out Hero Shack stuff. Also, again, check out my Ask Me Anything video and Ask Me Anything there so I can answer those questions when we hit 600 subscribers. And thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.